Satchidanandarupaya Vishvotpatyadihetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. Janmadyasya yatonvayaditarataschaarteshvabhignaswarat Tene Brahmahridaya Adikavaye Muhyanti Yatsurayah Tejo Varimridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadani Rastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Va Parerishwaraha Sadyo Hridya Varudyate Trakritibihi Shushrushubistatkshanat. Hari Om, and greetings from Niagara Falls. This morning we will complete 144 hours of Srimad Bhagavata. Do you all remember what Bhagavata means? Ta means boat or means. Va stands for best, means best. If there's a means, then obviously ga means to go. It means to move. And bha means Bhagwan. Bha also means light. Bhagavata is the best means to go within towards the light. There are other ways to understand this beautiful word. Bhagavata means Bhagwan ki. In Hindi, ki means in reference to Bhagwan. This is Bhagwan's name. This is Bhagwan's form. These are Bhagwan's teachings. Make sense? But here's another, and this perhaps is my favorite. It's Bhagwan's, not ki, but ke. Ke in Hindi means possessed by. So Bhagavata means those who have become Bhagwans. Does that all make sense? When I was with Pujya Swami Tejo Mayananda, we had such a lovely, intimate time, and I gave him in his hands the third copy of the Raw workbook and the Seeker's Word book, because they were released in 2020 and 2021, and I couldn't travel. The first copy went to Bhagwan Krishna, the second copy went to Pujya Swami Chinmayananda, and the third copy I kept above my bed to give to Pujya Swami Tejo Mayananda. And after he gave them back to me, he said, we need to keep on interpreting Vedanta in different ways. And his point to seekers is we have to keep reflecting on these words. And the point to teachers is you have to keep making this message relatable. As we continue to drive forward to the completion of Bhagavata, I'm asking all of you, do you feel Bhagwan's K? Do you feel that you've become Bhagwan's? Bhagavata is then followed by Purana. Purana means Pura Api Nava. That this is ancient, yet is applicable. It is new. That's what the meaning of Purana is. And I hope all of you can feel the practicality of which Bhagavan Krishna is teaching. And earlier I'd referenced that Prince Arjuna was 85 years old. And he learned so much about the world, but what use was it? He's feeling stress, anxiety, dejection. Only then did Bhagavan teach him that which is more applicable. And he became courageous. He became fearless. Bhagavata Purana. Rishi Uddhava asks Bhagavan Krishna, how will dharma continue to be facilitated when you are not present to our eyes? And Bhagavan Krishna begins to teach him. His teachings are Bhagavatam, and that's why Bhagavatam is also known as Vangmayi Murti. Vangmayi Murti, it means it is Bhagavan Krishna in the form of words. Vak, speech. So where is Bhagavan? These teachings are Bhagavan. And the more faith you have in this, the more you will feel this. So Bhagavan is sharing, how will dharma be facilitated? Through these teachings. That's why we call this Sanatana Dharma. Rishi Uddhava specifies, with you not being present to my eyes, how can I not be stuck in samsara? And I want you to reflect on the word stuck. How many of you felt stuck in some way last year? In some way you were stuck, professionally, relationship-wise. In Vedanta and Bhagavata, we're stuck. See, when we use the word samsara, we have these really childish notions. Samsara is a whirlpool that you drown in. Yesterday, when I arrived in the airport, I was directly taken to a birthday party that Vyasa and Shuka were at. It was awesome. They were happy to see me, but then they went back to playing. See how detached they are. I didn't see them for 3 weeks, and they only needed 3 seconds of me being there. And as the parents were talking, we were talking about how important it is for our kids to learn how to swim for their own safety. No, there's so much water in North America, as an example. So we have these childish notions of samsara, but the one who's making this applicable, if you are stuck, that's samsara. And I find a lot of people are stuck in their familial relationships. They don't really know what the purpose is anymore. Stuck in their professional engagements. They don't know what their purpose is anymore. So Bhagavan Krishna shares how not to be stuck. You have to engage in sangha. Sangha means to commune. Commune with what? Commune with who? He starts off by sharing commune with sadhus. A sadhu is one who is working for the welfare of people. A sadhu is one who doesn't work for themselves. They work for others. He follows up, Sangha with Sattva, that which makes you quieter. And we had gone through 10 different directions of how we can be quieter. Then Bhagwan continues with Sangha with Dharma. The Dharma is your purpose, what you were born for, to follow your Dharma. It is this Sangha that helps one to nurture bhakti. Then bhakti helps one to nurture jnana, and jnana helps one to nurture moksha. These thoughts are not new. I think I've shared these thoughts this entire year. So now we must have had already 10 classes on all of this. Just changing the words a little bit for us to reflect on more. A synonym to bhakti is sampatti. Does anyone know what sampatti means? Inner wealth, virtues. How do you know that you're practicing bhakti? You become more accepting, less controlling, more of a visionary, more supportive, etc. And what does sampatti encourage? Mumukshutva. That you can't stand being stuck. The flight from Mumbai to London was, 8 or 9 hours. And the flight from London to Toronto was another 7 hours or so. And as soon as you can take your seatbelts off, you see how people are itching to just stand, to not be stuck in that seat. And that's just a physical matter. I'm talking about this metaphysically. Giving you one more visual before we move on to a deeper review in some chapters. Have any of you been in quicksand before, by a show of hands? Quicksand? Okay. Somehow I found myself in a real quicksand. I'm not talking about poetic quicksand. I know all of us are in that, but physical quicksand. And I literally was trying to get myself out of this quicksand, but I couldn't. A friend of mine was with me, so I had to hold onto his arm and essentially pull myself out through him. I was pulling myself up his body. So being stuck requires you to hold on to another entity. Here Bhagwan is sharing sadhus, sattva, dharma. In chapter 13, there is a most relevant question, which is, how do we free the mind from objects? Try to personalize this. If you've ever felt lusty before, someone that you're attracted to, someone you want to possess, while you're doing whatever you're doing, where are you? You are in that quicksand, correct? And so Bhagwan Hamsa shares the way to separate the mind from objects, to not give in to kama, krodha, lobha, is to try to feel whatever you're lusty towards, whether it's a person or it's a position, feel that is Bhagwan Krishna, just with a different name, form, quality. If Ravana felt that Devi Sita was simply Bhagwan Rama with a different name and form and quality, would he have been lusty towards her? He wouldn't have. Another beautiful message from this chapter. Lots of airport examples. As I was going through the Mumbai airport, the London airport, what was one of the busiest places there? the duty-free shop. And I saw this one person buy a pack of Marlboro cigarettes. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly. And in India, they have these photographs that try to deter you from smoking cigarettes. And it was this awful photograph of someone with tongue cancer or mouth cancer. Like, you know, if I stuck my tongue out, it would be red, but that tongue was like white, like decomposing. So when someone smokes a Marlboro cigarette, they feel that they're getting this pleasure from this cigarette, but really, that pleasure is just a reflection of their own spirit. What has happened? Nicotine, nicotine, nicotine. When you get that nicotine, the mind becomes fractionally quiet. And when the mind becomes more quiet, what do you feel you are? The spirit, which is of the nature of Ananda. So now as you go about living your life with pleasurable experiences, watching a movie, eating chutney, whatever comes to your mind, to feel that's a reflection of you. How much more disciplined we will be with pleasure then, correct? Here's another deep teaching from chapter 13. If you contemplate on the mind will go away. And all that will remain is consciousness. It's like for those who have a pool, I think it's called flock, anti-algae. You have all of this algae in your pool, so you put this flock in it. And what happens to the algae and the flock? They both go away. What remains? The water. That pure water. When you contemplate on the mind, only consciousness remains. For those in our silence retreat, this is what I keep trying to guide us to. Article-less awareness. Can you just be aware, not aware of an article? After Bhagavan teaches all of this in this one chapter, then what happens is Bhagavan moves on. At the end of chapter 13, then Bhagavan Krishna, as Bhagavan Hamsa, he moves on. And that whole chapter is completed. In the beginning of chapter 14, Bhagavan Krishna shares with Rishi Uddhava what it feels like to follow chapter 13. This is just a small portion. Maya santushta manasaha sarva sukhamaya dishaha. This is a famous quarter that shares, when one's mind is filled with me. How did it get filled with me? Chapter 13. Then, sarvaha dishaha. Tell me what sarva means in English. All. Disha, directions. What does one feel? Sukhamaya. In all directions, they only feel joy. On our yatra, we went to Sarnath. That is the place where Bhagavan Buddha gave his first discourse. And when people think of Buddhism, one of the primary messages is dukkam, dukkam, dukkam. Sarvaha dishaha dukkam. But you see, Bhagavan Krishna's message is, if you're filled with me, in every direction, there's only sukha. And one more wonderful point that is shared here is, the one who practices chapter 13, they only feel joy in every direction, and they go about moving in directions, purifying the world. Purifying the world. When you're angry and someone tells you a funny joke, what happens to your anger? It goes away, correct? Temporarily goes away. Imagine someone who radiates joy, not through jokes, but just through their presence. Wouldn't they purify people of their anger and fear and so on? Sharing more from chapter 14. Bhagavan Krishna, after having taught through Hamsa Gita, shares that he is not affected by Maya. Bhagavan Krishna is not affected by Maya. And you, me, are a part of Bhagavan Krishna, which means we too are not affected by Maya. That was one of my last thoughts I shared with you in the last class. Whatever vices you have, like lots, let's just focus on worrying. If you have the vice of worrying, if you start to reflect on Bhagavan Krishna doesn't worry, and I'm part of Bhagavan Krishna, therefore, I shouldn't worry either. Whatever worry there is, that belongs to the mind. That is not my nature. The car that we drive right now, the service symbol is there. That car needs servicing. Vivek doesn't need servicing in that regard. I also need a lot of servicing, but not like that. Yes, that's the conditioning of the car. It's not my conditioning. The verse I had read to you in chapter 14, verse 27, Vishayan dhyayatas chittam vishayeshu vishajyate mam anusmaratis chittam mayeva praviliyate. As long as you try to find joy externally, you're going to feel heavier. You're going to be heavy-footed, always needing stuff, heavy-hearted. Everyone is going to offend you. Heavy-headed when it comes to self-development, when you're 60, when you're 70, in the next lifetime. I was recently with our Upacharya. His name is Swami Shardanandaji. And he was sharing, when you turn 84, on your 84th birthday, you are to sit and people around you are to perform Abhisheka to you. They're supposed to chant Purusha Sukta to you because by 84, you should be enlightened. How? As long as you think of articles, beings, and circumstances, you will be heavy. As long as you think about Bhagavan Krishna, you'll become light-footed, light-hearted, light-headed. Self-development will become real for you. Change what you think about. And as you do, you'll become disinterested in articles, beings, circumstances. When I was with Guruji, there was a family there with two young daughters, let's say 8 years old and 12 years old. And he was asking them what they do. And they were saying they're in this class and that class. And then Guruji leaned forward to the mother, and I was right beside her. So maybe he was leaning towards me too. And he gives her this squint-looked face and said, none of that matters. Piano doesn't matter. Phys ed doesn't matter. Reading doesn't matter. All that matters is happiness. Did you know that Sri Ramakrishna barely knew how to write his own name? He barely knew how to write his own name. Yet, he could only come down from enlightenment when they would put a mithai in his mouth. Just to show you what's important and what's not important. This chapter is concluded where many details are given on dhyana on contemplating on Bhagwan. His names, so much about his forms. And so really what I'm sharing in chapter 14, what Bhagwan is sharing, shift your attention from the external to the internal. And you already know this, but why is this chapter here? Are you practicing this? There are several hundred chapters in Bhagavata, but they're coming to an end now. We've invested 2.5 years in Ramayana, now almost 5 years in Bhagavata. In a most accessible way. Purana, ancient yet applicable. What are you thinking about? Chapter 15. Chapter 15 is about siddhis. Now we're really captivated by this. A siddhi in English is called a power. We recently explored this in the happiness series in December. We went through 8 mental powers or personality powers. One is prapti. Whatever you work for, that you're able to manifest that. Just to give you an example of these siddhis, tell me, if you want any sort of power in life, like to acquire what you work hard for, to have good relationships, what is one general virtue that is required to be powerful? Anyone want to guess? Discipline, yes. What's a similar word to discipline? Patience, yes. Starts with a C. Concentration, that's right. Concentration precedes all of these siddhis. And I've encouraged everyone, if you have the path or the option to concentrate and not concentrate, not concentrating may be more fun, but if you choose the path of concentration, a lot more will come to you. It may not be fun. Studying without music may not be fun. Cooking without the TV on may not be fun. But this is a long-term investment, this concentration. One of the powers that Bhagavan Krishna shares with Rishi Uddhava is the power to read others' minds. How did it happen? If you know how to read your mind, you will be able to read other people's minds. I'm sharing this based on experience. And if you just want this in a shady way, if you want to be able to read other people's minds, fine. learn how to concentrate first. Chapter 16, I've already described to you about Prince Arjuna. He comes back in this chapter. In chapter 16, I'm on verse 6. Verse 6. Evam etad aham prishtaha prashnam prashna vidam vara yuyutsuna vinashane sampatne arjunena vai. Bhagavan Krishna shares with Rishi Uddhava that you are a great questioner. You are a great questioner. He likes these questions because Rishi Uddhava's questions are never about that which is superficial. And he says, your question is great now. Your question is, what did Prince Arjuna ask you when he was ready to fight in the Mahabharata war? So Rishi Uddhava asks Bhagavan Krishna, what did Prince Arjuna ask you and what did you respond with? And in this chapter, this essentially is chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita. If you want a summary of chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, it is chapter 16 of the 11th section of Bhagavatam. Bhagavan goes on to share what his vibhutis are. He says, Rishi Uddhava, you are great. In this multiverse, there is greatness. But remember, all of the great and greatness comes from God. Rishi Uddhava, you want to be able to see me. When I don't look like this, here's how you can see me. Here are some of the highlights. And I'm going to look for you to answer this first question. Bhagavan shares, amongst all those who are unconquerable, who do you think is the greatest? Please share in the chat. Who is unconquerable? Any guesses over here? Bhagavan, yes, Bhagavan says the mind. Out of all of the entities that cannot be conquered, what is the most unconquerable? The mind. And that's why in chapter 13, Bhagavan says, you have to rise above the mind. You can't fight the mind with the mind. He further on shares, amongst all of the purifiers, please note this carefully, he says, amongst all the purifiers, I am air, I am fire, I am water. Air, fire, water. Isn't that what we're investing in through Prithvi Seva Sangha? These are ways we can purify. And he also shares Atma. Anyone who feels that they've lived a vicious life, a selfish life, the technique to leave the past is Vedanta. Get to know who you are. This is the way to become more pure. Chapter 17. In chapter 17, Rishi Uddhava asks, what are the characteristics of different ashramas? We have two societal systems. One is known as the Varna ashrama, which is really the color of your personality. And then we have the, typically we know as ashrama, which is the stage of your life. So he asks questions about this. Here are some highlights from this chapter. First of all, what's more important? Your Varna or your ashrama? Let's have a vote. Varna means the color of your personality. Ashrama means the stage of your life. How many of you feel Varna is more important by a show of hands? Ashrama? Okay. The answer is Varna. Varna. In English, we can call this guna. And ashrama, in English, we can call karma. So let me give you an example of this. When I was speaking to the Hindi Vedanta course students, I was telling them, until I came to Sandipani, I felt that my guna was rajas, and so my karma became rajas too. Business school, real estate, etc. When I moved to the ashram, I realized my guna is actually, I think, sattva. And then I aligned my karma. Now what I do is I study and share to be sattvic also. So whenever you try to understand Varna and Ashrama, you have to think about both. Varna is your inner world, karma is your outer world. Your inner world is really who you are, not your outer world. But if you know your inner world and you align your outer world to be like that, your evolution will be much faster then. Much faster. Am I making myself clear? So remember, you always have to, when you analyze yourself or if you're judging other people, look at their guna and karma. I'm reading to you what some of the teachings are about Varna, the color of your personality. I'll read this in English. Those of a Brahmana nature are characterized by control of mind, control of the senses, purity, internal and external, contemplativeness, contentment, forbearance, integrity, devotion to me, kindliness, and truthfulness. How many of you feel this describes you? To some extent. Be generous, okay? To some extent. That means you're a Brahmana. You may not have a Shikha, but this is your Varna. Impressiveness, strength, self-control, courage, endurance, generosity, enterprise, firmness, reverence for holy people, commanding power. These are the inborn characteristics of a Kshatriya. How many of you feel this describes you more by a show of hands? See, you started off as a Brahmana, now you've come to a Kshatriya, yes? I'll continue. And these we have to listen to so carefully, because who knows how society is defining Vaishyas and specifically Shudras? Listen, this is coming directly from Bhagavan's mouth. Faith in God and the Veda, charity, absence of arrogance, service to holy people, insatiable acquiring, these are natural traits of a Vaishya. A Vaishya also has faith in Bhagavan and the Veda. And now, the spirit of sincere service to all. The Devas, holy people and other Varnas, the cows, satisfaction with what one receives for their service, these are the inborn traits of a Shudra. As I read all of this, I wish I was a Shudra, to serve all. Isn't that a awesome life to have? And just to wrap up this chapter, I'm going to read to you one verse. This is verse 21. So what I just shared with you, how can one continue to be a bhakta? Bhagavan is specifying now, if you're a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, this is how you should live. That's your Varna. Now he says, this is what is common to all of the ashramas. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. Ahimsa satyam asteyam akama krodha lobhata bhuta priya hite hacha dharmoyam sarva varnikaha. Shared out in the chat or out loud here. Ahimsa, what does it mean in English? Sensitivity. Satyam, nobility. Asteya, non-arrogance. Akama, non-desire. Akrodha, non-anger. Alobha, non-greed. This is lovely. Bhuta priya hiteha, one whose purpose is to help all beings. Dharma ayam sarva varna. It doesn't matter what stage of life you are in. This is common to all stages. I'll read it in English so it's clear. It is the common dharma of persons belonging to all varnas to be free from cruelty, dishonesty, thieving, lust, anger, and greed, as also to do what is good and pleasing to all creatures. Okay? So I read to you what are some general responsibilities of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. Then I read to you what is common to all of them. Now, this chapter also highlights the responsibilities of a brahmachari and a grihastha. I'm only going to give you one from each. One of the responsibilities of a brahmachari, one who is trying to know Brahman, is to be unconcerned with their appearance. To be unconcerned with their appearance. How many of you feel you do a good job with this? To not be concerned with your appearance? There's not too many hands up. I had met a seeker in Delhi, and the next day I had gone to Mumbai to meet Puja Swami Tejomayananda. And then she saw a photograph of me with Guruji on Facebook, and she private messaged me sharing, I definitely thought that you were going to shave or at least tame your beard before meeting Guruji. And then I thought, I'm unconcerned about my appearance. I'm only following what the teachings are. Now, one responsibility of a grihastha is to purge mama and aham. So for the brahmachari, to be unconcerned with your appearance. For the grihastha, to be unconcerned with mama. What does mama mean? My. And eventually, aham, or I. Today, I happened to be listening to a podcast on Tesla, and Elon Musk was described as a narcissistic sociopath, according to this podcast. And someone had asked him a question about this, and he goes, do you see a lot of narcissistic sociopaths in the people you work with? He goes, I see one in the mirror. So we are all narcissists in a general way. We have to be unconcerned about this. And Bhagavatam is so detailed. Often when we describe being a brahmachari, if you look into a dictionary definition, it means celibate. One who does not have intercourse. And here in Bhagavatam it says, for a spouse to be dedicated in thought, word, and action with another spouse, meaning their spouse, that's the same as practicing brahmacharya. To be committed in thought, word, and action, having intercourse with your spouse, that's the same as brahmacharya. And I'm sharing this with all of us because if you use Wikipedia to study life, there's so much exclusivity. When you study the details of our shastras, it's empowering. Okay? So just sharing this one more time. In chapter 17, the highlight is on your varna. And there's lots of general responsibilities I shared and specific ones. And now Bhagavan Krishna is shifting to ashramas, and I've given you for brahmacharis to be unconcerned with appearance, for grihasthas to be unconcerned with mama and aham. Next chapter, what are the dharmas of those who are vanaprasthas and those who are sannyasis? And just for you to think about, a vanaprastha, I have shared with all of you, begins at age 48. Recently, Swami Shardanandaji shared that it begins at age 50. So he's a little bit more compassionate. He's given you 2 more years. Now, for a lot of people in this course, you outwardly are a grihastha, but inwardly should be a vanaprastha from whatever perspective you look at. And you don't want to know what your responsibility is. That's why I'm pausing here, so you'll have a good week. Next week, I'll lay it on you about your responsibility. Oh.